Cool. All right. So this is getting things done for the I'll do it tomorrow's and I forgot type of people. Uh, and this session is very useful uh, for people who do a lot of these things. So if you spend a minute reading this, see if you feel that you recognize parts of yourself in this, right? Which is, I just read it out, right? People who switch between a lot of different contexts. If you forget things, because you're doing other stuff, or you get anxious because you had a relaxing day and realize that you had to do stuff that you didn't do. If you're reminded of things in different places, and someone might send you an email that, hey, you had to do this, you didn't do it, or that someone sends you a Slack message that, hey, last Wednesday you told me you'll do X and I'm still waiting for that. But more importantly, kind of on an overarching level, this is very useful if you've tried to-do lists many times and nothing has improved for you, and you have no idea why some people obsess over them, and or of people who just seem to be on top of everything all the time, right? And that's where I started, which was the last point. And I've switched between a lot of different checklist, to-do list type of apps, and just shit never worked. And I never understood why anyone thought, how can this be a good idea? Like nothing, this is so trivial, so basic. I don't understand how people use this. As a result, I've had to put in a lot of effort to come to terms with how my brain works. Because personally, I have a lot of trouble focusing. My attention wavers a lot. Undone things give me a lot of anxiety, and overall, any sort of inefficiency feels like a net loss to me. Like if I have to if I do something over and over again, and if I'm not doing it efficiently, or if I'm not putting in the effort to make that process be better, I don't feel happy about it. And this is a very strange type of thing to be, and it's not very helpful many times, but it helps in other places, right? And as a result, I've had to figure out hacks and tricks that I must do so that I can be productive and not go into some sort of self-deprecating spiral that, oh my God, I had to do this and I didn't do it. So before I go to Todoist itself, which is sure, I mean, this talk is about Todoist, but I don't actually think Todoist is important. I think it's the very neat part, and because we're a group of engineers, I think you will enjoy this. The very neat part in all of this is that why do to-do lists even work? What is it about to-do lists, right? And do they even work? And there's this very, very neat thing called the Zeigarnik effect, which was this term named after the woman who discovered it and penned it down in her research. She's this Russian woman called Luma Zeigarnik. Sometime in the 1920s, she wrote about the Zeigarnik effect, which is that open tasks in your head tend to occupy your short-term memory until they're done. So what she means by this is that stuff that isn't finished will occupy the short-term memory part of your brain until it is done. Okay. So, and the short-term memory is that memory, that side of your memory that you use when you're thinking about stuff that is kind of happening on an ongoing basis. So perhaps you're writing, say, an API gateway, right? And you're trying to redesign or re-architect this thing. And because you're not happy with the way it works, you kind of mull it over in your head over and over again, right? No matter if maybe you're driving to work, maybe you're buying vegetables, maybe you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, you end up kind of thinking about it in the back of your head always, right? And that's your short-term memory, that the thing that's kind of very quick to access, the thing that's going through your head over and over again. The problem is that open tasks occupy your short-term memory until they're done, which means that that's, by the way, that is the reason why people get distracted by thoughts of unfinished tasks, regardless of how important they are. So what you actually want to do is to think about this API gateway re-architecture that you're thinking about, that you're working on. But what your brain is reminding you randomly without you having any control over it is that you had to send Pratul a copy of your flight ticket, right? And it's just extremely annoying. And we have very little short-term memory, and you need it to remain free so that you can focus on the important tasks. And your brain, when it's thinking of unfinished tasks, there is no degree of prioritization that happens in our heads at all. That's not how the human brain works at all. So your memory will randomly remind you of unfinished open tasks, and they're all at hitting you with the same level of priority. So you will feel that the ticket that you had to send Pratul is about as important as the API gateway redesign, when you know it's not, but your brain makes you feel it that way, right? This Zeigarnik effect and the way that a human brain works is also the reason why getting into flow, that feeling of like, wow, stuff's just happening, I'm just focused deeply. That's why it takes so much time to also get into flow, because for you to get into flow, you need to convince your memory and you convince your head that my short-term memory will only focus now on the task that is at hand and I will do nothing else at all. Which is, I'm sure all of you have experienced it, right? It's a thing that's, when it happens, it's very magical. You just, spend 45 minutes or 1 hour doing something and it feels like you've done 2 hours, 4 hours worth of work. It's a very magical feeling to be. But okay, so the Zeigarnik effect is cool, but Zeigarnik also did a very important follow-up research, which proved something critical, which is that let's think of two scenarios. Scenario number one, where you do something right away, and scenario number two, where you make a note of something to do later. Your brain is not able to tell the difference between them at all. And she proved this by doing a lot of studies over a lot of different people. And basically that means that whether you do something right now, or if you make a note of it that I will do this later, your head will tell, it's almost as if your head feels that, okay, I've already done it. That means that it goes away from your short-term memory. And that means that you can focus, you can kind of use this trick, you can use the Zeigarnik effect to train your short-term memory to only hold the thing that is actually important to you. Hey, if anybody has any questions in the middle, just like stop me in the middle or like ask a question in the middle, okay? And this is really neat, right? And this is many things use the Zeigarnik effect, but a very famous use of the Zeigarnik effect is, the result of that was this book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. This book is very popular. You may have seen it on every bookstore, from Amazon bestseller lists to the pirated person standing on the road with books. It's one of those books, like How to Get Friends, and one of those, like, those types of books. It's extremely popular, and the reason it's so popular is because people just can't get things done. We are really bad at doing this, so of course everyone wants to know, how do you get things done? So the book is actually very long, and what I'm going to do in this very quick presentation is to tell you everything that the book is about without you having to read it, right? And the most important part of the book is that, let's say you're working on something, okay? You're writing that API gateway, you're in the flow, your brain is full of all these designs and everything. And Pratul comes to you and says, hey, can you please water that plant in the corner of the room, okay? So what you do at that point is that you qualify the thing that is this incoming task. Will this task take less than 2 minutes? If it takes you, and 2 minutes is very strict qualifier, like 100 seconds, right? If this takes you less than 2 minutes, you do it now, right away, immediately, and that will not break the flow that you were in. It will not mess around with your short-term memory at all. You can actually do this, and in fact, try this out, because I mean, it's one thing to read this in the book. It's one thing for me to tell you, but I've practiced this for many years, and it is very magical when you feel it yourself. So if it takes you less than 2 minutes, you do it right away. If it takes you more than 2 minutes, you write it down and you continue whatever it is that you were doing. This is this is the TLDR of the book. This is how you get things done. If your thing that you have to do like takes you less than 2 minutes of total time, you do it right now. If it takes you more than 2 minutes, don't do it at all. Write it down and continue doing whatever it is that you were doing. That's all. Okay. I mean, not exactly, but of course that's majority of the book. The problem is that now we are coming to the Todoist part, which is that tools are only as good as your ability to work with them, right? And investing in tools takes a lot of time. We know this, right? We all, as engineers, we work with a lot of complex tools. We work with complex operating systems, IDs, and services or whatever, right? We know this inherently, but every once in a while you'll forget about it. So, for example, a tabla is a lovely instrument and it sounds great, but you would never judge the potential of the tabla by playing it for 10 minutes, right? You wouldn't do that. And that is applicable to any other tool, right? You have to kind of become better at it before it starts to make sense. And I was mentioning to Govind that there is a reference to Rome in this presentation, and that reference is here, which is that this entire presentation took me less than an hour. I timed myself. It took me less than an hour to throw all of this together because I am so interested in improving efficiency and kind of the stuff around how the brain works, etc., that I have a lot of notes from a lot of books in my Rome. And I basically was able to traverse through my Rome research notes and just throw stuff here. I didn't come up with any of this. I just threw it all in pitch and it just made me a presentation, right? But the reason why that works is because I don't have notes as pages. I have a system of taking notes. There is a framework, one that I did not invent. I am using a framework that already exists. And that's why it works. Otherwise, you can't just take pages of notes and they won't just magically work, right? So why Todoist? Let's come to Todoist, right? One reason I like Todoist a lot is because it's completely cross-platform. So there is no vendor lock-in. It works on your pretty much every single browser, OS, app, whatever that you can think of. It has phenomenal scheduling abilities. I will show them to you. There is an excellent natural language type of thing to add a task, which is the most important thing that you do in a GTD system. And it has projects, it has labels, it has reminders, it has Kanban, it has shared projects, etc., which are all really nice. There are a lot of options. There are many GTD apps out there, hundreds and thousands of them, which all implement GTD in a digital way. But I personally don't use any of them because of two major reasons. One is because they're very slow, and two, they have very poor scheduling abilities. That is why, for example, I don't use Notion, because Notion is so stupidly slow that it's basically unusable. Because by the time you open the Notion app, your brain is already, or my brain is already thinking about something else. I'm getting annoyed by the whole thing. And I'll show you how to do is just, there's nothing else like a dedicated thing, right? Okay, now there's going to be show time now. Any questions so far? Cool. No questions? No questions. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Bring up Todoist. Okay. Okay, the problem is that this is not too messy. My Todoist. Let me show you this elsewhere. Okay. Where is the share screen? Where is that screen? Okay, cool. So can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a dummy Todoist account here because my Todoist has a lot of stuff in it, and I just don't have the time to censor it to remove personal information and stuff. So I'm just not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead, you can still see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just trying to bring up my speaker notes so I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So the way that Todoist does this is that there is an inbox and then there are projects. Okay. And the way that, remember I said that what you do is that you write it down if you have a thing that takes you more than 2 minutes. So the way that you do that is in Todoist is that you trigger the button. I think this is, I remember keyboard shortcut. So this is, I think it's A. If you press A in the browser, it will just bring up this ad box. And I can just say things like book a flight ticket for Kitty. Okay. And by default, anything that you create, you can see it goes into the inbox, right? It says inbox here. And this is very useful because what you can do later is you can create more projects. And if you create more projects, you can categorize your tasks as per certain facets that you may want to categorize them in. Now, the ability to add tasks is the anywhere you are. is the most important thing about Todoist, which is why it's great that Todoist exists on every single platform, because that means you can install it on your phone, you can install it on your iPad, you can log into every single computer's browser that you may use, so that when you are anywhere and when someone tells you to do a thing and you know it's going to take you more than 2 minutes, right, which it will take you only a second to realize that, okay, I can't do this right now. You go to the nearest closest device that you have, you open Todoist and you dump this in, right? So the way that you do this is that you dump all the stuff here, and at some point when you have some free time available, or when you have some mental space available, maybe you're taking a break, you then go to your Todoist and you look at what the things that you've put there and see if you feel like doing any of them. That is the essence of Todoist. Now, the thing that people kind of, I think, miss is that you want it to exist everywhere. I've spoken to a lot of people who end up installing it just on their computer, and that doesn't work. It has to exist everywhere near you at all times, because otherwise, when someone tells you to do something, you'll be like, your instinctive reaction is that yeah, okay, I'll remember. Right? I'll just remember to do this, and that it is in itself a wrong thing, right? For this to work properly, you'd want to not have to worry about the fact that I may have forgotten something. And the easiest way to do that is to always have Todoist everywhere. Now, the next thing that Todoist does really well is that repeating tasks. So for example, I can do something like every day, remind me to take vitamins, right? And this will now show up every day, today, when I look at the today section, every day this is going to be here, right? So you can see that I added it on 15th Feb, when it will show up every day. Okay, and this is this thing that happened. This is the natural language thing I was talking about, which is that remind me today. You see, it automatically figured out that there is a thing today. You don't even need to type today. You can do TOD and it is already today. You can do the same thing something else. So for example, water plants tomorrow. TOM is tomorrow. You could do something water plants every Wednesday, Saturday, and it will only show up on your today list on Wednesdays and Saturday. But you can also do every Wednesday, Saturday after 18th March. And this, I guess that doesn't work. But you could do repeating stuff like every Monday starting 20 Feb. And this will now trigger whatever the next Monday is after 20th Feb. So there is a lot of nuance in the scheduling that is built right into Todoist, and there are no buttons to click anywhere. It is something that you just learn. You go to the help page and just learn their DSL, and it just works, right? For example, one of the very neat things it does is that, say, for example, you want to click buy that algo book. Buy that algo book. And you don't know when you want to do this. So you can do someday and it will automatically move it to 2 months later. Or you can do few days and it will move it to 3 or 4 days ahead in time. So stuff like this, right? So this is the scheduling stuff. By the way, all of this is inside the Todoist help page. You have to read that guide to learn this. I'm just showing you what eventually, once you learn that, what you're able to do and how you're able to do this. So let's say that I put this by that algorithm book a few days, right? And I do this, and now it's gone from here. It's gone from here because it wasn't today, right? It's sitting in my inbox here because it's now, you can see that there is some stuff here today. This is today, which repeats every day. That's why there is that circle symbol there. And then there is this thing that is in this task that's assigned on Friday. What you can also do is you can right click here and there are some immediate scheduling options here. You can see that you can change this to today. It's showing 15 because today is 15th. You can change this to tomorrow or the weekend, and that means Saturday, and next week, which by default means Monday, but you can go to Todoist settings and change what next week means. So for instance, a lot of people, when they start their Mondays, don't want to be bombarded with tasks from Todoist because Monday is an important day for you. You have important work meetings, or the week has just started. You can change next week in Todoist to mean Wednesday, so that when you say that, I'll do this next week, Todoist will only bring it up to you on a Wednesday when you're kind of, in the middle of the week. So there's a lot of configuration options that let you fit the workflow in a way that suits the way that you think about your time and stuff. But you don't, not everything needs to even have a date. So by default, I can actually do something like make deck. And if I just hit enter in the inbox, it'll actually not put a date against it at all. So stuff doesn't actually need to have a date at all, because some things you may just want to live inside projects and not actually have to worry about when you do this. And I use this often, by the way. I think there is one other thing that I wanted to show, which is the repeating thing. So one of the things that the repeating thing that does is that, for example, I can say take medicine, and I can say every 5 days. Okay. Now it'll do this today and then 5 days after that. Okay. But there are two ways of repeating tasks in Todoist. The other neat thing that it does is that you can do every exclamation mark 5 days. And what this means is that until you actually do the task, don't remind me every 5 days. Remind me 5 days after the last time I did it. So this lets you be human a little bit. So there is something that you want to do every 5 days. Let's say you want to go to a yoga, do some yoga every 5 days. But you know that every 5 days you won't be able to do it, and you just don't want to be bombarded with it every 5 days. So if you set it to every exclamation mark 5 days, there is a reminder for you today, and you say, yes, okay, I did it today. 5 days later, it shows up, and you decide to not do it, and you decide to reschedule it for 2 days afterwards. And you do it 2 days later, it will remind you 5 days after that. So there is this sense of, when you use every exclamation mark, it gives you a little breathing room to be human. And if you remove the exclamation mark, it's very strict about it repeating every 5 days. Okay, cool. Any questions so far?
I had a question, but this basically whatever you're typing, it just automatically is figuring out that this is the schedule. It marks it in point. I tried it out and it works. So
yes, that is correct. Yes, in fact, I don't even think there is a way to do this without typing. Todoist never built that at all, because it's just impossible. It is so complex. There is so much that it can do that there is no way it would be a dialog box full of 40 buttons. And by the way, there are some GTD tools that are like that, and it's just horrible, right? You don't want cognitive overhead when you're doing this. That is the entire point. The entire point is to not clutter your short-term memory or clutter your brain with like unnecessary details. You want to focus on the task at hand, not on how do I add a task, right? Now there are two things. There are not now. That's effectively all Todoist is, which is scheduling and projects. Now you can see there is an example here that says read every day P3 at goals learning. What this is that read every day. P3 is priority. So tasks are priorities, and there are 4 levels of priority in Todoist. Sorry, one second. There is white, yellow, blue, and I think red. White, yellow, blue, and red, right? So there's priority 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can just bring that up by saying just saying P1. It converts it to priority P4 or whatever, right? But also there are labels. A lot of people use labels for stuff, and you can use them by creating a label by doing @of. I think labels is only in Pro, which is why it's not showing up. And then there are projects which come up by hash. So as soon as you type hash, it's now showing you a list of the default projects, right? So for instance, you can see on the left here, there's a welcome and there is a try boards, right? So I can just do welcome, and it's now not going to go in my inbox, it's going to go in my welcome. Okay. All right. There are now, that's pretty much it. That's in Todoist. What I want to also spend the next 5-10 minutes talking about is some extra stuff that I do that I found very useful. One thing that I do is that if I have a lot of things in my today board, I only use a few levels of priority, which is that I use, we have only 10 minutes left. Cool, that's great. Priority 1 is red flag, and I use blue. So I only use red and blue flags, and white is of course by default. When I put something against a red flag, what I tell myself when I put a red flag there is that this has to happen today. It is extremely important that this happens today. And under a very exceptional circumstance, should I not do it today? So it makes it easy for me to prioritize everything, all that's red, and ensure that I at least get those done today, unless exceptional circumstances. Blue is the what I use for stuff that is important, but it's okay if it goes away. If I take a couple of days to do that, like for instance, if I have to buy a warranty for my iPhone, right? I mean, I have a month's time. It's okay. It's not that important. It is important because after a month, I will not be able to buy warranty, but it's okay if I like delay it a couple of days. So that I'll set as blue priority. Outside of this, I don't use any other priority at all. I personally only use white, and white is the most useless. And which brings me to the last point, which is that a lot of people will tell you that you shouldn't postpone tasks, and that's one of the reasons why people don't end up using a to-do list at all. I do not do that. I do not subscribe to that philosophy at all. I liberally postpone things all the time. I never beat myself up about it at all. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I stopped using to-do's feature, a karma feature. There's a karma feature where you can set a goal that you must finish 5 tasks every day. I think that's a stupid idea. It does not matter. We're human beings. It does not matter how many tasks you finish in a day at all. It matters that what matters is that you do the things that are important to you, and you have a system where you can define what is important to you, and therefore are able to focus on just that stuff. So the red, blue, white thing works very well for me. Postponing stuff happens all the time, and it works very well for me. You might be surprised to know there are some things that I have ended up postponing for 6, 8, 10 months and just never done it, which is completely fine, because that just means that I just don't consider it that important. And if I had, I would have done it. Okay. So that's that. The other thing that I wanted to actually show, let me see if I can show this, is okay, yeah, I think I should be able to show this. Let me just share my screen quickly. What I want to do is actually share my Todoist and show you how I use projects. So you can see there is a lot of stuff here. And I want to talk about some of these things because people think a to-do list is a to-do list. I don't think a to-do list is a to-do list. I think Todoist is a fantastic piece of software. And when I find something that works so well, I end up using it for everything. I end up investing in it a lot. So one of the things, for example, that I use in the body and health project here is stuff that has to repeat. So for example, stuff like I have to take my vitamins every day, but also things like I have to go to the dentist every 6 months. I put that in Todoist and I don't remember it. Or that I have to take my cat to the vet, every 3 months or whatever. And that's something that I end up putting in the thing. Sorry, Atharva is asking a question about today page. If you leave a task undone, does it disappear into the inbox or carry forward to the next day's today? It will carry forward to the next day's today, and it will show up in a separate section called overdue, where anything that is not from today all goes into overdue, and you can reschedule it if you want.
Also, another thing, since this anyway interrupted the flow. Do you like target for like an inbox zero kind of thing, or you just you're okay with like it filling up? Okay.
I don't care at all. I target my mental sanity. I target getting the most important things done, and I target the fact that I should never feel stressed that I have forgotten something, because there are just too many things that I have to remember, and it's just not possible for a person to just keep all of those things in their head, right? So, okay, going back to the projects before we finish on our 5 minutes. The maintenance project, I've put stuff in this. For example, I have to descale my washing machine every 4 months. Who remembers this? Like nobody, no sane person remembers to descale their washing machine every 4 months. But if you don't, it'll go bad because there's hard water. That fact that I have to check my access points and Wi-Fi router for security updates, that goes into maintenance. I have to get my PlayStation cleaned for dust. It goes into maintenance. I'm just reading this out from what else is there. A lot of long-term storage stuff goes into Todoist. For example, I have a blog project, which is just blog post outlines. So instead of putting it into Roam Research or something like a note-taking software, I just create a task and just like keep writing in that task for an outline that, okay, I want to talk about X and I feel like this is important and that is important and that is important. And I just write a couple of lines and just leave it there. enough that when I come back to it later, I'll be able to remember what I wanted to write about. I also do that for side project ideas, which is this project, a side project. Like, I want to build this service, I want to build this app, etc. I have a very neat hack for shopping, which is that given this consumerism age that we live in, I don't want to, buy any random interesting ad that I see on Twitter for this random interesting, I don't know, pencil that writes in 4 colors. So what I'll do for stuff like that is that I will put it in the shopping project with a link to whatever this is, and I'll put a thing of next month. So I'll schedule it so that will automatically schedule it for 30 days later. And 90% of the time, when 30 days later it shows up in my today view, I have already not lost interest in it and I will just not buy it at that point. And it's a hack that just arrived to me because I've just used Todoist so often. There is a mule section here, which is because I have so many friends who live across the world that whenever somebody tells me that, hey, I'm going to visit India, a couple of weeks later, I'll go and look at that and what is it that I can get them to get me? Because otherwise, where do you keep that stuff, right? There's lent out, which is stuff that I've lent out to people, books and stuff like that. There is income tax filing, which is that every year I forget what all the steps that I need to follow for income tax, that I have to give them insurance stuff, my home loan stuff, capital gains, etc. Who's going to remember all that every year? Just put it inside a Todoist project and just look at that project. I don't even check the tasks off. I just look at those 5 tasks in that project every year that I have to file income tax. I have a travel checklist, again, where I don't check, which is basically an extensive, long list of things that I must take with me every time I travel. And this may sound really funny, but I have stuff in it sectioned by beaches, mountains, and weddings. So if I'm going to a beach, I will not forget sunscreen. If I'm going to the mountains, I will not forget to take an actual woolen sweater. And if I'm going to a wedding, I will not forget to take formal shoes. As a result of doing this, now I can pack somewhere when someone asks me to go on a holiday very, very, very quickly. And I never forget anything important because anything else that's not in that list is not important. Over the years, that list has grown slightly longer. Like, for example, now it has Kindle or book also, because once I forgot to take both my Kindle and a book, and it was very, very annoying on that trip. Yeah, okay, that's it. I wanted to actually show some real world usage of how somebody would extensively use this. Yeah, that's about it. We have, how many minutes do we have? 1 minute 43 seconds. Any questions?
It was really nice, Pratul. I have one question though. Like, is this workflow only work for like a single task? What about stuff that have like states, like getting a bank account, which probably have like multiple steps?
So you can, by the way, I pay for Todoist, and I've never used Todoist free, so I'm not sure what exists in Todoist free and what is not, only in paid version. But a task can have subtasks in it, so you can create that. So for a thing like that, I would end up probably doing that. Actually, I would not do that. What I would probably do if I have to, like, for instance, I would take a bank account or something, is I would end up creating another project and just dump all the things that I have to do there. That's easiest for me to manage. Just cleaner that way.
Cool. Awesome.
What about like there are so many different platforms to do this. Todoist is one of them.
Yeah.
I feel like Notion and Notion for sure has an overlap.
No, Notion is garbage in comparison to this. It has no scheduling abilities. It is extremely painfully slow, and therefore it does not qualify at all. It has to, you have to understand it. You're never going to, where this call is going to end. Maybe I'll just create another call. Hold on. I will stop recording here.